Blacksmith and the Demon, a Russian fairy tale? Once upon a time, there lived a blacksmith. This man had a wise and clever 6-year-old son. One day, the old man went to church. As he stood in front of a picture depicting Judgment Day, he saw that a black-horned ifrit was also in the picture. "Oh my God," he said to himself, "I'd better have one made for my blacksmith shop." So he hired an artist to paint the same picture on the door of his blacksmith shop that he had seen in the church. From now on, every time the old man entered his shop, he would look at the ifrit and say, "Good morning, my fellow countrymen." Then he would fire up the cauldron and start his work. Our blacksmith lived happily with Ifrit for about 10 years. Then he got sick and died. His son became the head of the house and took over the blacksmith shop. But he was not inclined to pay as much attention to Ifrit as his father did. He never said good morning to him when he entered the shop in the morning. Instead of saying a kind word to him, he would take the biggest hammer he could find and hit Ifrit 3 times in the center of his forehead and then go to work. When God's holy days came, he would go to church and light a candle for each saint. But when he saw Ifrit, he would spit in his face. So 3 years came and went. Every morning, the blacksmith's son continued to spit on Ifrit or hit him with a hammer. Ifrit endured all this patiently, but finally his patience ran out. This was too much. "I have had enough of his insults," he thought. "Now it's time to play a trick on him with a little diplomacy." So the demon disguised himself as a young man and went to the blacksmith shop. "Good morning, uncle," he said, and went in. "Good morning. Will you take me as an apprentice, uncle? At least I can carry wood and work the bellows for you." The blacksmith liked this idea. "Why not?" he replied. "2 heads are better than one. Isn't that right?" Ifrit began to learn the craft of blacksmithing. After a month, he knew more than his master, and everything he couldn't do, he could do. It was really fun to watch him. Words cannot describe how pleased his master was with him, how much he loved him. Some days the master didn't even go to the shop because he trusted his journeyman completely and knew that the young man knew his craft. One day, the master was not at home. The journeyman was left alone in the blacksmith shop. At that moment, he saw an old lady passing by in her car, so he stuck his head out of the door and started shouting, "Hey, gentlemen, ladies, please look here. We have opened a new shop. We are making the old young." Hearing this, the woman quickly jumped out of her car and ran to the blacksmith shop. "What are you saying? Is it true? Can you really do this?" she asked the young man. "Let no one doubt our knowledge," replied the demon. "I wouldn't invite people here if I couldn't do what I say." "Well, how much?" the woman asked. 500 rubles altogether." "All right, here's your money. Come on, turn me into a young woman." The demon took the money and sent her coachman to the village. Go and get me 2 buckets of milk," he said. Then he took a pair of tongs, grabbed her by the feet, threw her into the cauldron, and burned her. All that was left of her were her bones. When the buckets of milk were brought, the Ifrit emptied them into a large tub. Then he picked up the bones and threw them into the milk. And what would you like to see? 3 minutes later, the woman came out of the milk, young and beautiful. Then she got into her car and drove home. She ran straight to her husband, but even though he looked carefully, he didn't recognize her. "What are you standing there for?" she said. "Look how young and graceful I am. I don't want an old husband with me in this beautiful state. Go to the blacksmith and ask him to make you young. Otherwise, you will never see my face again." Having no other choice, the man set off. But the blacksmith had returned and went to his shop without wasting time. The blacksmith looked around, but the journeyman was nowhere to be seen. No matter how much he asked, he could not find out where the young man was. So he set to work alone and started swinging the hammer. Just then, the rich woman's husband came into the shop. "Turn me into a young man," he said. "Are you in your right mind, Baron 12? How can I make you younger? Come on, you know. I know nothing. Don't lie, cheater. You'll make me a young man, like you made my old wife a young girl, or my wife will leave me. But I've never seen your wife in my life. Kalfan has seen her, And what difference does it make? If he knows how to do this job, you, as his master, should know much better. Come on, get to work as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be very bad for you. I'll make you regret you were born with birch towels. The blacksmith had to try his hand at transforming the rich gentleman. He secretly spoke to the coachman to find out what the journeyman was doing to the old woman. Then he thought to himself, very well, so be it. I'll do the same. If I succeed, great. If I fail, well, what can I say? What comes around goes around. So he immediately got to work. He stripped the gentleman naked, grabbed him by the legs with tongs, and threw him into the boiler. Then he started the bellows. When he had roasted him thoroughly, he threw his bones into the milk and waited for a young man to appear. But nothing happened. He searched the tub thoroughly. There was nothing but blackened bones. At that moment, the gentleman's wife sent a messenger to the blacksmith to ask when her husband would be ready. The poor blacksmith had to tell her that the gentleman was no longer alive. The woman was furious to learn that her husband had been reduced to embers instead of being rejuvenated. She called her trusted servants and ordered them to take the blacksmith to the gallows. Her order was immediately carried out. His servants went to the blacksmith's house, seized the man, arrested him, and took him to the gallows. The young man who had been the blacksmith's journeyman suddenly appeared and asked, "Where are they taking your master?" "They are going to hang me," said the blacksmith, and quickly told him what had happened to him. "Our uncle," said the Ifrit, "swear that you will never hit me with a hammer again, and that you will treat me with respect like your father, and the gentleman will rise again, and as a young lad." The blacksmith promised to never raise his hand to Ifrit again, and to treat him with respect. So the journeyman hurried to the blacksmith's shop. He brought the gentleman with him and called out to the servants, "Stop! Wait, don't hang him! Here is your master." The servants immediately untied his hands and set the blacksmith free. The journeyman disappeared and was never seen again. But the master and his wife lived a long life of prosperity